So Iran won this war between Israel and Iran. We must congratulate Iran for this win. Iran won the war just like in 1967, the Arab nations won against Israel. But whatever you do not Google the victory of Syria, Egypt, and Jordan over Israel in the Six-Day War of 1967. Don't Google it. Take my word for it that they won Israel, just like Iran won Israel in this 12-day war of 2025. So congrats to Iran. And to show you concrete evidence of Iran's win, what we're going to do in this video is to look at the damages done to Israel by Iran, and then look at the damages done to Iran by Israel. And whatever you hear in this video, you must never forget that Iran won Israel in this war. Don't ever forget that. So let's get to it. What damages did Iran inflict on Israel in this war? So for starter, Iran fired within the course of the last 15 days, Iran fired over 400 missiles into Israel and close to 1,000 drones into Israel. Of the 400 missiles, over 95%, close to 95% of them were intercepted. Only between 20 to 25 missiles passed the Iron Dome and hit their target. And again, some people say that is a failure. 95% success mark on the Iron Dome is a failure. And we must accept that with them. They are right. The Iron Dome is a failed system. How can it score 95 over 100? It's failed. Then of the 1,000 drones that were fired, just 200 made it to Israel. The remaining were shot down over Jordanian airspace and Syrian airspace. 200 made it to Israel. Of that 200, only one passed the Iron Dome and hit a target in Israel. Again, that is a failure. How can 99.9% accuracy success rate be success? It must be a failure. And we must agree with Iranian supporters and pro-Iranians. Iran scattered Israel. Let's come to the specifics of the damages that were done in Israel. So, first, there was a medical center that one of the missiles hit. There was a military school that another missile hit, not the entire school, part of the school. There was a lab in the university that one missile hit. Then one missile hit the surrounding compound of the IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Force complex, the compound, zero casualty. It didn't hit the compound. The missile was intended for the compound, but missed and hit in neighboring buildings around the compound. There was a technological park that another missile hit. There was oil refinery, very important, that another missile hit. There was a power plant that the missile hit. There was a waste treatment plant that the another missile hit. And then close to 10 residential buildings were hit by missiles. A government complex as well was hit by missiles. Casualties came to about 28 civilians dead, close to 400 injured. Number of military targets, 0. No military casualty. There was no single armed military officer that was killed in Israel as a result of all of Iran's attack. So, let's do a summary. Iran engaged in a military campaign against Israel and did not kill any military officer, not one. Iran killed 28 civilians and wounded close to 400 civilians. And so, that being said, let's look at what Israel did to Iran. And like I have said before, whatever you hear from this, and whatever you go online to Google to confirm what I'm about to say, we must never forget that Iran scattered Israel and Iran won this war. That we can never forget. So let's continue. Let's get to it. First, let's look at the military targets that Israel took out. Starting with their chief of staff. So Israel took out the Iranian chief of staff. It took out the IRGC commander-in-chief. That is like in Nigeria now, that is the army chief of staff. It took out their naval chief of staff, took out their air defense chief of staff, took out the equivalent of our civil defense, the head of civil defense, took that one out. It took out the head of intelligence, that's like our DSS. It took out DSS, the head of DSS. It took out the commander of weapons, that's the person in charge of their armory, their weapons. That went off. Took out deputies of intelligence. Now, the number of top military officers that Israel eliminated in Iran in the last 12 days is over 10. I'm talking about top chiefs, and deputies. I'm not talking about low-level army officers yet. We'll come to that. Then there are top nuclear scientists. Top nuclear scientists and their deputies, close to another 13 of them, were taken out by Israel. Then let's come to their infrastructure. First off, Israel decimated Iran's air defense system. That's one of the reasons why Israel would tell you that it has air superiority over Iran, which is one of the reasons also why the US can fly a bomber jet over Iran without any dictation, because their air defense radars and their air defense missiles were taken out. 3 of their airfields where they have their military jets and were bombarded with all of the military assets, fighter jets and cargo jets, all inside were scattered. To add even small this on top, Israel decided to bombard the gates of the prison, their whole political prisoners, so that they told them, you are free to go. Then IRGC headquarters, command headquarters in Tehran, that is the equivalent of our army headquarters in Abuja. Israel scattered it with all of the military officers and top military commanders that were inside. Some of those commanders that I listed just now, they were killed during this strike. The equivalent of their Air Force command base in Tehran, Israel scattered it with all of the top military officers and officers that were inside. The equivalent of their police headquarters, Israel destroyed it. The equivalent of their civil defense headquarters, Israel scattered it. The equivalent of their DSS, Israel decimated it with all the officers inside. But like I said, we must never forget that Iran won this war. Then 3 airfields, military airfields in Iran with their bomber jets and cargo planes inside were brought to dust. Then you have missile launchers. Missile launchers are massive trucks that carry missiles but are mobile. They move around. Israel scattered over 45 of those missile launchers with the missiles on top of it. I'm not talking about the stationary ones. The stationary ones were easy targets. They were over 150 plus of stationary missile targets that Israel destroyed. I'm talking about the mobile ones. Then their space agency and aerospace complex, Israel brought it to rubbish. Their drone manufacturing facility, the industry, the company that manufactures their drone, was reduced to dust. Their ballistic missile manufacturing industry company was reduced to dust. The company where they manufacture centrifuges for their nuclear plants was reduced to dust. 3 nuclear facilities were scattered and set back like 3 to 4 years. But like I said, we must never forget that Iran won this war in every aspect. Completely won this war. And like I said before, whatever you do, do not Google the damages suffered by Iran as a result of Israeli strike in the last 15 days. Don't Google it. Don't. Because Iran won this war fair and square in all ramifications. Iran won. So let us summarize the damages suffered by Iran. Total casualties, over 600 people killed, over 4,000 injured. Now, the propaganda you will hear from Iranians and their supporters is that the 400 plus that were killed are women and children and civilians. And we're like, how now? Their army headquarters in Tehran was bombed during active session. Of course, they are at war, so the officers were not going home, they were planning. Some of the army chiefs were killed during the bomb. We know at least 50 to 80 officers were killed in that attack. Their Air Force headquarters, command headquarters in Iran was bombed, scattered with their Air Force commander-in-chief and officers inside. We know those are military officers. Their civil defense headquarters was scattered. We know those are officers inside. Their police headquarters was decimated, completely brought to dust. We know those people inside are officers. 3 of their military bases in Iran, their military air bases in Iran was scattered. Abina civilians, they run their fighter jets. Abina civilians, women and children be their commander-in-chief, and the military officers, they plan war. Guy, these people, propaganda of women and children. Am I saying women and children were not killed in this attack by Israel? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. For instance, some of the nuclear scientists, some of them were killed in their homes with their wife and children. That I am seriously against. Why we understand there are casualties in war, we cannot be naive and stupid enough to say that of the 400 people that were killed in Iran, that over 60% of them are women and children. That is not possible. If there are women and children involved in those killings, they will not be up to 50. It doesn't excuse the killing of women and children, but we understand that in war, people die. They are collateral damage. But these people, they lie to their teeth. They are unashamed, undisgracefully liars. Even in Gaza, they exaggerate figures. UN in 2024 reviewed the data it was given out of Gaza with respect to the number of women and children that were killed, because they discovered that the Gazan Health Ministry, which is controlled by Hamas, was exaggerating the numbers. The same thing in Iran. So I just pointed to you their naval headquarters, their army headquarters, their the Air Force headquarters, their civil defense headquarters, their DSS. I'm saying the equivalent in Nigeria now, which will be their DSS will be their CIA headquarters. What again? 3 military air bases were destroyed with active military officers in all of those places. And you are telling me that it is women and children that were controlling and planning wars that were killed in those attacks. How about now? Mona they lie small. Mona lie with decency now. Lie with some decency. Then take the mobile missile launchers, for instance. It is standard practice that at least you have 3 personnel operating a mobile missile launcher. You normally have the driver, you have the missile pad operator, and then you have a technician. And we know that close to about 40 or 45 of those mobile missile launchers were destroyed by Israel. So now women and children, they operate their missile launchers for Iran. You guys should take it easy. When you are lying, at least try to balance this fact. But like I said, Iran won this war fair and square. So let's do a conclusive summary of the war, this 12-day war that just happened between Iran and Israel. So Iran engaged in a war with Israel and killed 0 military officers in Israel, 28 civilians, and wounded about 400 civilians, including some army officers were wounded in the attacks in Israel. I think like 3 or 4 army officers we hear of were wounded in the attacks. No army chief in Israel was killed. No military target in Israel was destroyed. When I mean destroyed, I mean destroyed. We have bombs hit certain buildings close to military targets, but as in say destroyed, none was destroyed. Then come to Iran. Like I said, do not Google the number of infrastructure and facilities destroyed in Iran by Israel. Don't Google it. Don't Google their nuclear facilities that were destroyed. Don't Google their ballistic missile factories and their drone factories that were destroyed. Don't Google their military headquarters and their police headquarters and civil defense headquarters that were destroyed. Now, I'm using police, civil defense, DSS, military, Air Force, so that you Nigerians can relate. But the names in Iran, they are giving different names, just so you know. And are they all being said and done? 400 people were killed, of which we know, if we are doing simple maths from the targets, headquarters that were destroyed with officers inside, at least over 350 of those are armed officers. We know that at least 10 to 15 of their top military officers, commanders in chief and army chiefs were taken out. We know that one. But we must never forget that Iran won this war in all aspects. You know, some of our brothers are still grieving and are still in denial. And you know, denial is a part of grief. You have to give them time to recover and come to reality. And until they do, don't argue with them. Iran won this war. And don't Google the damages done to Iran and compare with the damages done to Israel. Don't do that. Just believe me as I'm telling you that Iran won this war fair and square. You know, it is just fascinating to have conversations with people who are in denial. They are like little children who tell you that my father is the strongest man on earth. My father is the strongest man on earth. And you're like, why do you say that? I say, my father carried me up and threw me up. And you're like, okay, John's father also carried him and threw him up. He said, no, but my father threw me up more. Say, okay, but John's father can lift a truck. Can your father lift a truck? No, but my father will buy me ice cream. that is how it is to argue with people that are in denial. They just move from points without any evidence. Just how does ice cream, what does buying ice cream get to do with being the strongest man? But we must never forget, irrespective of all the damages that Israel inflicted on Iran, Iran won this war. Irrespective of the fact that Iran went to UN crying and went to the EU begging that they should condemn Israel and make Israel stop the assault on Iran. We must never forget, Iran won this war. You need to see the Iran foreign minister in the EU and in UN holding pictures of women and children. Are you seeing what they are doing to my country? And these guys know how to use women and children for emotional blackmail. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorist organization in the world. So you sponsor and you yourself will strap women and children with bomb as suicide bombers and send them into crowded places to blow up themselves. And it's the same you that is coming to show the picture of women and children and crying that look at what they are doing to your women and children. You don't have value for your women and children in the first place. And the only reason why they'll keep doing that, showing you a picture of women and children, is because they know that civilized human beings like you and I have value for women and children. So they want to prey on that naivety, on that moral conscience that we have. They don't have value for their women and children. You cannot tell me somebody who uses his women and children as suicide bombers has value for their lives. But we must never forget the fact that Iran went to UN and went to the European Union crying and begging and pleading for sympathy. We must never forget that they won this war fair and square.